All right, guys. Welcome to the Coaches Clinic from McCracken County Youth Soccer Association. First things first, I want to thank you guys, everybody, for coming out and taking time out of your day to come to a volunteering position that's going to help grow our community. We're super excited to have you guys. I'll introduce myself first. My name's Jake Vanderberg. I just got voted to the McCracken County Board of Directors. I'm going to be your coaches outreach. So if you guys have coaching questions or if you need some help on game days, I'll be available. I'd like to also introduce a couple of key people who are here as well. We have Aaron Osborne here, who is on our Board of Directors. He's going to be a great point of contact for you guys to know as well. I have my wife, Kaylin Harris, here in the McCracken County shirt. She'll be game day presence for us, as well as my mother here will help us with some of that stuff. And then all the way in the back in the blue shirt standing, we have Tara. Tara is going to be here. She's also on the Board of Directors to help and be there for you guys. And we have Benjamin Brown over here, who is also on the Board of Directors. He will be here to help you guys with anything you guys need. And again, we're super excited to have you here and start this season. So we have sent out an email to everybody. There are a couple of links in that email. It has a link to the PowerPoint that we'll be going over. It also has a sample session plan that I'll be referring to today. And then it has a full session plan that you guys can use for your own use and kind of reference if you guys want to build your own practice plans for later on in the season. I'll give you an overview kind of how we're going to structure everything. First, I'll talk to you guys a little bit. We'll go over this PowerPoint that I have for you guys. And then we're actually going to have an on-field portion. We brought the Paducah-Tillman High School boys in for you guys. We're going to ask a couple of volunteers to pick one of these plans, one of the sessions, and run just a short 12-minute, 15-minute session. And you'll have the help of myself, my wife, my brother, and the Paducah-Tillman coaches to be at your side and help you walk through any of it. And it's just a no-pressure environment, right? All of these boys know what they're doing, and they've been playing soccer for a long time, so they're here to help you guys too. Be very respectful, and we just want to give you guys an opportunity to experience some of this information and apply it in real time, and then the ability to ask questions so you feel comfortable with anything. If you have questions at any time, stop us, raise your hand, and ask us a question. Sound fair? Deal. All right, guys, I'll get us going through the PowerPoint, kind of go over the information that we're going to do. First off, the topics that we're going to go through, we want to go over what we're going to expect from a recreational league. Okay, we'll have a couple of different views on that. Then we'll go over kind of how we can give knowledge to the kids to help knowledge retention and help them grow. Then we'll go over a couple of coaching points that you guys might try and remember for the season that may help us have retention in our kids and grow their knowledge base of the game, kind of how we can get them to remember this stuff. We all know you guys are the bomb, so that's why we're excited to have a good group of people here. Then we'll go over essentially how you might try and structure your practice plan so we can keep as many kids active at a time, and so we can get a good plan so that we can focus to a focal point in our practice. All right? So for our expectations, I actually want to open it up real quick and, I want to open it up real quick and ask a quick question to everybody. What do you expect to get out of coaching? Anybody? What do you expect to get out of coaching?
I've learned how to play soccer.
To learn how to play soccer, you specifically?
I've never played
Okay,
soccer.
cool. Well, hey, that's exciting, and that totally falls into a recreational league, and we hope that we can make that inclusive environment. So you feel free to do that, man. I'm so excited. Anybody else? What do you guys expect to get from coaching?
Joy.
Joy.
Kids have fun and I'll help them have fun.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a perfect answer as well. So for us, in a recreational environment and what we should expect out of coaching, I think what we all need to lean towards is enjoyment and fun, right? You want to see the growth of your kids, our kids, and the young athletes in a recreational environment. Winning, quite frankly, should be pretty low on the list. And I'll let you guys in on a study that we went over in our coaches course from FC Barcelona. I coached for FC Barca for about 3 years in Nashville, and we had continuing education every month. They showed us a study from overseas that they presented to us where they interviewed 200 professional teams, they interviewed 1,000 collegiate teams, and they interviewed, I think, 3,000 high school programs. And it was, what are the top 100 most important things to players? Can you guys guess, let's throw out a guess, where winning fell in that? Anybody? Out of the top 100.
50.
Very close. It was 47. Winning was 47 on that study. And that's, you know, at the top level even, right? So number one was being a part of the team. Number one, to feel included and be a part of something was number one. And number two was enjoying the game. So the answers that you gave are so perfect, right? We need to focus on that, and that's what we want to create here. So I'm excited for that and for you guys. What does a recreational league mean for the participants? Anybody?
Everybody gets to play.
Perfect. Everybody gets to play? Learning. Perfect. So what recreational means to the participants, it is a total non-pressure environment to come and play a game, right? It is a competition, of course, but in a recreational environment, this is a game first. And some of these kids, quite literally, may have never touched a soccer ball, and they may have never played a sport, period, okay? So in a recreational environment, the participants want to be included in a sport, right? And they want to grow athletically, and they want to grow friendship, and they want to grow enjoyment. And that's got to be a recurrent theme for us, guys. Then, the last thing in our expectations I want us to think about is we have to create that inclusive environment. And that has to go to our players first. It has to be for our referees. But it has to be for our families too. We have to holistically understand, right? And we have to get this across to everyone. Our attitude around the game, our language around the game, everything about the game has to be positive and inclusive and bringing people in. In sports and competition, there's always going to be times where there is going to be some exclusivity. There's going to be disparities in skill level, and it's going to be our job as stewards of the game to make everybody feel included and to keep them enjoying everything. So I want to touch on essentially attitude and language real quick. Some things that I would hope to encourage. There should never be a point this season where any of us feel comfortable using obscenities in any fashion. And creating that inclusive environment for players and referees specifically, there's gonna be some times where we disagree with the referees. But we're the example setters, so we have got to keep our attitudes positive. Gotta be positive. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I want to move on to the inclusivity, right? And some things we need to think about there. It has got to be fun. Everything's got to be fun, right? These kids, we are losing players in sports at an alarming rate right now in the United States. There's so many distractions. There's so many instant gratification programs on their iPhones, their iPads, their video games, where they can go and not experience any negativity, right? It's just instant gratification and instant feedback, and it's positive, and there's bright lights. So for us, we gotta create this fun environment. So one thing that I touched on was our language, right? In competitions, just the way that we've grown up, and I know maybe potentially a lot of you have experienced this, it tends to be combat. It tends to be combat. It tends to be a combat vocabulary. It tends to be a combat competition, right? And I'll kind of go over some of that language, but soccer is a game, right? And you play games for enjoyment. Some of the things you might hear around soccer that will show you the examples of combat that may be subconscious, you'll hear attack and defend, right? That's a battle. but maybe some language that we might be able to change it to. Instead of saying attack, we could say possess the ball, right? Hold the ball in possession. Instead of defending, it's not a battle, recover the ball for possession, right? You'll hear things a lot like drill, right? When you think drill, 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 that's military language, right? Maybe we say exercise. Exercise is equated to growth and development, right? Maybe some other things you would hear is beat this player or be aggressive, yeah? So all of this type of stuff, I'm not telling you there's not a place for it, but in a recreational environment, we kind of have to soften it a little because it has to be positive. Does that sound fair? Yeah? Awesome. I have a couple of other things you can go over there on the PowerPoint. You can see the differences in those. If you have any questions on maybe some aspects of the game, I can try and give you what I would tell you around that type of stuff as well. On the back of that, we have to have positive reinforcement, right? A lot of the time when we are in these competition sports or we're leading a team, we're gonna use punishments, right? When people act out, you wanna use the punishment, but what I would expect us to start doing is finding ways to reinforce positive behavior instead of focusing on negative things, and specifically using running as a punishment, right? We don't want our kids to equate running as a negative thing, yeah? So they come here to experience and be included. So I would urge you, instead of forcing your kids to run or have a physical negative, sit them out, maybe for 2 minutes, right? They come to get that attention. They act out to receive attention, and they come to play. So simply sitting them out for 1 minute, man, that flips the switch in a lot of kids that are gonna be your behavior issues, because they're looking for that attention. So we don't want to necessarily bring the hammer down on them. We want to be positive to all our kids. We'll just move away from that behavior and allow them to come back to positivity. The next thing I would like to go over in positive reinforcement. I don't know how many of you guys played soccer. How many people played soccer? Sweet. So how many people experienced, maybe not directly, someone takes a corner kick and it's bad. It's a bad corner kick, and it doesn't even make it in bounds, it goes out of bounds. And you hear a coach go, "What was that, Henderson? You're never taking a corner again." Yeah? That happens all the time. But guys, it's okay to mess up a corner kick, especially in recreation, right? Give them the opportunity to fail, right? Failure at a task is not bad. It's the first part of problem solving and understanding. And especially in the recreational arena, we're gonna have a lot of failures. A lot of failures. Some of us might not even know how to kick the ball yet. And that's gonna be okay. The kids have to have experiential learning, all right? So that's gonna kick into maybe the next portion of how I want us to start instilling knowledge to our kids. I know all you guys know that there are different forms of learning. Right now we're just going through auditory learning, which may not be some of your guys' mode of learning at all. But what I will tell you is, how many times have you known a person and you've asked them for 10 years to make a change, and until they make the change or they understand the problem, it's never fixed, right? So what I would ask us to start doing as coaches is, instead of rogue telling someone something, how can we structure our information as a question? So I'll give you maybe like an example, right? We want to have our wingers focus on finding space in the wings. So instead of just saying, "Hey, Thomas, you have to stand on the wings." Well, why? All right? Maybe you could say, "All right, guys, where is there likely to be the most pressure on the field?" Anybody? Where is there likely to be the most pressure on the field?
Around the ball.
Around the ball, yeah? In the central zones, of course. So, Thomas, if you wanted more time, where might you find yourself in space on the field? And so maybe they can understand that, right? So if we can give them information and they can figure things out for themselves, their knowledge retention is gonna go through the roof, guys. And that experiential learning is gonna be super positive for them. And I'm excited about that. Next, in our coaching points, right? I think it's important, and even here, I try and give examples through this. You gotta throw questions out, and you have to let kids explore it. If they don't feel safe speaking up, they're gonna turn inward, and that's when they stop coming, right? So I'm not saying you have to put them on the spot, but no answer is a stupid answer, right? We're all trying to learn and be positive here in the recreational environment, and I'm so excited to have us here to do that. All right, next I'm gonna move into essentially structuring practice plans. I know on the PowerPoint I have coaching points, but I think just for flow and ease of understanding, I'm gonna do a lot of referencing in my structuring practice plans back to my coaching points, or vice versa. So I would like to start with structuring practice plans first. All right, I'm gonna start with the practice play in the structuring practice plans portion. Here you'll see a little graphic, and it is gonna show you, essentially, at the bottom you'll see 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, right? That's your number of players. The bottom arrows, right, you see 6 seconds, 15, 30. That's your active time in your exercise. And then above that, you'll see 45 to 75 seconds, right? That is the amount of rest time that a person would need being fully active in a 6-second interval to recover. All right, and as it grows, you'll see it works up to 15 minutes, and they'll need at least three minutes to recover there. All right, so this is going to be in line with U.S. Youth Soccer, the play structure of practices. All right, when you structure your practices, I think everybody's going to have an hour or an hour and a half. What are we doing? Hour or an hour and a half? Hour. Okay, hour and a half for older. So if you're putting it into 3 portions, of course you're looking at your 20, 20, 20 for that. All right, your first play portion is just going to be some type of fun game, essentially small-sided games or something that is quick that replicates all portions of the game. That's not necessarily your biggest coaching area, right? You're gonna have kids that show up late. You're gonna have kids that take a long time getting their stuff on, getting their gear on, right? So you need something that's just quick, that replicates the game, that's just gonna be something that's fun, that you're not necessarily focused on grouping everybody in and holding their whole attention and coaching them at that point. I would suggest essentially, if you have the practice plan to follow along, I have 2 small-sided games that I get them in my first play portion. And that's something you can get kids in that are late, and it replicates the game, and it's just for fun, and you don't have to coach that, right? But it works towards the summit of what you're trying to do overall. Next is going to be your practice portion. This is going to be the biggest portion of your coaching requirement. In your practice portion of your session, this is where you want to utilize all your coaching points. This is where you want to start teaching towards your focus, right? If you guys have the practice plan, my focus is improve building up chances. So I have 2 small-sided games first, and then I have a large game that brings every person in at the same time. In this second portion, right, the practice portion, you want to bring your whole team in, right? And you want to have control of your whole team at this point, because you are going to give a bunch of coaching points, and you don't want to give a coaching point here and then go give a coaching point here. We need everybody grouped together, right? And then finally, our play portion, guys, this is where you're going to give it back to the kids, essentially. They are going to take all of your coaching points and go apply it, and you get to watch them here, right? You can't stop them all the time during this portion, because this is seeing whether they were listening and whether we're retaining knowledge. So in your final play portion, you want to play for fun, kind of focused on what we're doing. You want to practice hard. Here is where you really lay in your coaching points. You can stop play if you need to here. You can discuss. Then when you move into your final play portion, think about letting the kids go and have that experiential learning. All right, moving on. Here's some little key things we need to work on when we are thinking about our practice plan at the very first, right? So, does my practice plan or do my exercises replicate the game, right? In this, what we're referring to, are there all moments of the game? Is there possession and recovery or attack and defense? Is there a transition period where teams can win the ball and continue playing? A lot of the times we have drills organized where you kick the ball out and it's over. But if you kick the ball out in a real game, it's a throw-in and we're going. Yeah, so we want to keep the continuity there in transitions. You need clear teams. When you're structuring, you need 2 teams usually. You have to have boundaries set up, okay? If there are nebulous boundaries, when do we know how to stop? It could just be anywhere. And then you have to present a way to score. These are the bare minimum things for structuring an exercise that you have to have. Next, I would like to talk about the difference in a technical practice and a tactical practice, okay? So a technical practice, you might often find you have a lot of kids standing in lines and waiting, right? Because you're working on a small mechanic, potentially passing on the ground. So you might find a lot of the times that you have 2 lines set up with 7 kids in each line and they're passing the ball, right? So in that exercise that I just explained, how many kids are active at a time? 2 kids, right? And we got 1 hour to get them to learn how to practice, right? To pass. So practically, think about how many kids are standing at a time. What I would urge you to try and do, instead of forming lines to practice passing, what if you made a square, right, and allowed 7 kids to stand outside with the ball at ready, and you had 7 kids inside the square, and they all ran at a time to take passes from all these kids outside, right? At this time, you have active rest inside that exercise for the kids that are outside the square. So those kids may be catching their breath, but they're all still active, observing the playing space, and they all still have to analyze things at all points. And the kids inside are experiencing a lot of activity, right? And that works on passing just the same, but you have 14 kids active instead of 2 kids active. So I think we need to try and focus on that, and if you guys have any questions on some ideas, I'm happy to go through some more stuff like that as well. Next, what I would ask us to think about when we're structuring our plan, is it prescriptive or is it fluid? So what I mean here is, a lot of us have an idea of how soccer works. We know how it works. So we tell our kid, Craig, he's got the biggest boot on the field. So we tell Craig, when we take goal kicks, Craig, you kick the ball as far as you can. And what happens for the rest of Craig's group? He kicks it as far as he can kick it. And that's what Craig does. So you've just prescribed that's how soccer happens. But what we should tell Craig is, there's always a decision-making process, Craig. Sometimes we kick it as far as we can because we want that positional advantage. But if they've decided that they're going to scoot back and start playing that, you have to make the decision to change your play. And we need to play shorter. So it has to be fluid. He has to understand soccer is not prescriptive. It is a series of variables that are manipulated to find success. Then the last thing when you're structuring an exercise, is it turn oriented, right? It's kind of similar to the lines. If it's turn oriented, if you have kids taking turns taking corners, right? You don't want to line 4 kids up and have one kid go once, and then the next kid go, and then the next kid go, and then the next kid go. What if they only get one chance to do that, and they've taken one corner kick, and it's a bad corner kick, right? Then their turn is over. So what I might suggest instead is allowing that kid to explore that area 5 times in a row, and having all other kids active when the corner kick goes, and allow them to play that out. That way, corner kick is the focus, but it's just the restart, and the real focus is the actual game. Because corner kicks are not likely to take up the majority of your game, right? They may happen sparingly throughout the game. So as much as we can keep as many kids playing at the same time, the better. Cool? Yep. All right. So when trying to learn an idea for your kids, it's important that kids find success, okay? So kids need to find success when you're structuring practices, because if they can't find success in these things, they start to lose faith in the ideas that you're trying to give them. So if you're telling them that if we play it wide, we'll find more space, they have to really experience that. So some ways that you guys might help them find success, specifically in my practice plan, we're working on improving chances. You'll notice that the team that is trying to score always has a number advantage. And that's going to be something that's big. There are a couple of other ideas that you can do to help find success. You can give your kids extra space, and then there are some other things we might have to do. How many people have had that one kid on their team that regardless of what you do or where you put him, he's just running circles around people? Yeah. He's just out there, up top, right? So we have to figure out ways to help other kids find success around that person. What might you guys do to help your kids find success around that person? What's an idea, maybe?
Put that kid on defense.
You could put that kid on defense, but he may just take the ball every time, and then once he's taken the ball, now he's on offense, and he's running straight to the goal.
Put in a pass rule. He's got to make so many passes before he gets to shoot.
Ooh, I like that one. That's pretty cool. So that's a great idea, right? You don't necessarily want to limit all the time, but in some certain circumstances, to allow everyone to have that inclusive environment, we may have to put a touch limitation or a pass limit. He has to make so many passes. Great stuff. All right, let's move on to some of our coaching points. So for our coaching points and structuring our practice, I think I have the player development framework. You'll see this. This is a player development framework from US Youth Soccer. It breaks down all of the age groups, U6 all the way up to the international teams. And it will give you an idea of where cognitively these age groups are developed, okay? And what you might expect them to start learning about the game. For example, our U6 age group and U4 age group, US Youth Soccer says, kids at this point, I play with the ball and the ball plays with me, right? So it's not very advanced at that point, right? At that point, the ball bounces at them, right? They don't understand that they create that bounce, right? So I think we need to understand that type of framework and kind of manage expectation at different levels of the age groups. This is a real cool thing to look over and kind of wrap your mind around your age group. Okay, I'm not going to necessarily go over all those, but you guys are more than welcome to check that out. So, what I will tell you about practice plans, as I have been doing this over the past almost 10 years now, preparedness is paramount to your success. The more prepared you are, the more your kids buy in, and the easier it will be for you guys to be seamless through your practice. Things to think about going into it, right? Pretty simple right down the line. Do I have all my equipment? Do I have a practice plan? And then have I thought about my transition time? We said we have an hour practice, right guys? So, something that you might not have ever really thought about is, how much time am I wasting picking up cones? How much time am I wasting when the ball gets kicked out of bounds and everybody sits and waits for that ball to get brought back in, right? Over the course of an hour and the ball gets kicked out 34 times, right? You've wasted 15 minutes getting the ball back in bounds. So what I will say when thinking about your practice is, where's your equipment placed? That type of stuff. Other things to think about when preparing for your practice that is just baseline. What's the weather like? I don't know that we're gonna have a problem with the heat index, right? Because we're moving into the fall seasons, but you've got to check your heat index. It goes back to this active and rest interval time. They can only be active for so long at specific heat, and then they have to have rest. On that note, they also have to have water. They just have to have water. It is so important for us to keep the kids hydrated.
They need a big jug, not
Right.
a 20 ounce. The first thing, and I've learned this from the get go, tell kids that parents, this 20 ounce thing doesn't work. They need a bigger
Yes.
jug of water.
They need to put in, as much as they sweat, they need 2 times that amount of water going back in. So I mean, I don't know if you guys are experiencing it right now, but I'm pouring water out. Things to think about, right? In a similar way, where is all my equipment? Where am I standing during my practice, right? I know a lot of us want to be involved in the play, and we want to be looking at people specifically, but if I'm here addressing these people, what is going on behind me? I have no idea, right? I have no idea. Secondarily, in that point, if you're giving coaching advice to just all the way over here, and you're in the central zones, we don't know if these kids are paying attention to that information at all. And I will tell you, more than likely, if they're not in your focal point, they're not paying attention to you. And even if they are, they're still maybe not paying attention. They just might not be, but that's okay. We're here for fun, right? And we're trying to get them all on the same page. Now, I would like to talk about your time allotment a little more. During our time allotment, right, when we're going through our exercises, we need to think about how often are we stopping play, right? How often are you talking, okay? When we are focused on structuring our practice plan, all of our exercises need to lead into each other, okay? If you have a 20-minute exercise, sports science dictates you should talk less than 2 minutes during that period. So that's pretty tough. I tend to get long-winded, and I also tend to give an example and then reiterate that example from a different view to make sure I feel like I'm covering it. But if we're thinking about, are our kids getting the most out of this, we have got to keep the kids playing as much as we can, right? So something we can think about on that, water is not a reward, it's a necessity. So instead of stopping the play, you already know that you have to have active and rest intervals. Plan during your rest interval to bring everybody in at water and talk to them then, right? Because if you try and give coaching points and they're spread out across the field, who knows who all's paying attention? But if they're all brought in on the bench and they're drinking water, they're kind of a captive audience at that point, and you're not stopping your exercises. Yeah? Last thing, when you're introducing your exercise, you should plan to essentially have an introduction of information, a water point, where you discuss things we can do better, and then let them go experience, right? You gotta have your concise coaching points. So when you first introduce your exercise, you might not even go over all the rules that you're gonna introduce. You might just say, hey guys, we're playing a short-sided game. Y'all get in there and go play. It's 5v5. And then just watch them for the first 6 minutes of that exercise and formulate your coaching points, right? And then you'll have a real understanding of maybe what your kids are missing and what you want to talk to them about during your water break. And that's a better flow than using the freeze function at all points when something comes up. Because you're gonna be coaching a specific idea, and there are so many ideas to get through, right? That you're gonna see something and you're going, oh, stop, everybody freeze. But what I would urge you to try and do is log that in your memory bank and bring that up during the water break. So we can just keep the kids exploring and having experiential play. So the last thing that you have to be concerned about, I would say, during these coaching points is, does every portion of my practice build towards my original focus point? Yeah. The last coaching point, or last coaching point slide I want to go over is, when I find it, the variables of the game.
So, the very bottom sheet. There you go.
Boom. Perfect. New favorite coach. You guys know that? New favorite coach? All right, guys. So the last coaching points I want to go over are these specific advantages and disadvantages, okay? So we all know soccer, right? It's a competitive sport, so everyone, especially here in the recreational environment, developmentally, who knows how quick one child will develop comparatively to another child. So they're all going to be at different stages in development. All the bones in your hands are not even fused together until you're 15, 16, 17, right? So to compare a 9-year-old to a 9-year-old, who knows at what rate they are developing, right? So what we need to start focusing on is a couple of the variables in soccer that we can manipulate as coaches. There is something called a positional variable, a spatial variable, a qualitative variable, and a numerical variable. Does anyone feel comfortable trying to explain any of those variables? You got numerical? Let me hear it.
We would have more players on the field than the other team.
Boom! A numerical advantage, right? So we need to start teaching our kids that more numbers gives us the numerical advantage in the sense we should have more passing options. So we can start teaching our kids how to gain numerical advantages in different parts of the field. So I'll just go for the next one. I'll talk about a qualitative advantage. Qualitative is simply the idea that you have a player that is just faster than everyone. And we all at some point have experienced that in the recreational arena where one child is just so much faster than the other kids. That's just the hugest qualitative advantage. And we have to focus on how we can get around that. The last one, or the two last ones, spatial advantage. A spatial advantage, when you have space, you have time to make a play. So the more space you have, the more time you have. And the more time you have, I believe, given an infinite amount of time, you all, or us as people, we could achieve anything. More time gives you higher quality. And the last one is a positional advantage, okay? That refers to the position on the field. And what position on the field you are in should change your play style. If we're right in front of our goal, are we passing it through the middle of the field? Probably not. Because if we lose that ball, we're more likely to be scored on. But positionally, if we're in front of their goal, we probably want to start accessing the center of the field. And these are the things we've got to start thinking about to tell our kids. All right, guys. Last on this page, you will see US Youth Soccer tells us how big we should make our playing spaces, okay? So for the number of players, right, if it's one player, the field space should be 11 by 7, okay? So it shows you here, if it's a 2v2 game, that's 2 players on a team, it should be 22 by 14, right? So we have a couple of exercises that we're going to get into, and I have an exercise that is a 5v3. The 5 kids are not likely to be as tired as the kids of 3. So your field space should be based on the team that will be the most tired. In that sense, if you're running a 5v3 exercise, the field space should be 33 by 21 for the kids of 3. And that's essentially what I have for you guys on my Coach's Education course. Again, I want to thank all you guys for coming out and sitting through this information. I hope some of it kind of helps you think about your season upcoming. And now I want to open it up, see if anybody has any questions about that. And then we're going to get into an on-field portion where we set up some of these drills and you can see it in real time and have some feedback. I am also, again, going to ask a coach if they would love to volunteer to work with some of our Paducah Tillman boys.